So thanks for having us today. Again, my name's Lisa McClure. I'm the Senior Manager of Restaurant Training for Jack in the Box. And then my coworker Stephanie is going to come on in a few minutes after me and speak too. So I kind of just want to start out by giving a really quick snapshot for anybody who's not familiar with Jack in the Box. So Jack in the Box is a quick service or fast food, as many call it, restaurant. We began way back in 1951, so we're actually coming up on our 75th birthday, which is amazing. Shown here in the picture is our CEO, Jack Box, who is very well known in our really fun and edgy commercials. And if anybody's familiar with those, you probably know that we really thrive on doing things outside of the box. So case in point, we're actually known as the burger joint, famous for its tacos, which kind of makes no sense. So Jack in the Box is based in San Diego, California, but we do have restaurants nationwide and in Mexico in over 2,200 locations with over 65,000 employees in the field and are majority franchise owned. And then the Jack training team shown here consists of 3 instructional designers, 2 graphic designers, 2 managers, and myself. And Jack actually owns Del Taco also, which is another really popular QSR restaurant here on the West Coast, but our team specifically manages training for Jack only. So we work to design, develop, and produce all e-learning, training videos, print materials across all departments for the restaurants in the field, and of course, leadership development, which leads us to today. So this particular leadership development course we're going to talk about, the audience for this is district managers, or DMs as we call them. So in our company, there's a little over 300 currently for Jack. And anyone on this call that's in an industry that has locations that are spread across a large area, that have continually changing business and products, you guys know district managers, probably the most influential level of leadership in the field. Most of them have worked their way up from within the restaurants, so they know the business inside and out. And for them to want to believe in something and take action, they have got to see the benefit to their restaurants, to their employees, and directly to their sales. So this leadership course, what it actually began as was an in-person multi-day conference that was going to be held in multiple rounds over the course of a few months at our corporate office. And actually, it was a continuation of a previous leadership conference that took place in that same method the prior year. So here we are in the midst of developing this conference, and it began to become apparent during that process that the cost of travel for DMs to attend was just not going to be feasible for our franchise owners due to some economic changes and new labor mandates that came through around that time. So our first quick pivot, you can see Ross there pivoting. Now we need to explore what we can do virtually to have the exact same level of impact we would have in person. So we start to look at what all would be included in this level of development course, and it became apparent really quick that this was going to be extremely long and have a ton of information included. So how do we get now the attention and commitment of an audience that's driving to different locations daily? They have minimal screen time available to be on their laptop, and they're used to moving super quickly in a really fast-paced environment. So quick pivot again, here we go into blended microlearning, which is where we landed. So once we identified that microlearning was really the right approach for this audience, now the next step, gaining the approval of executive leadership and the audience that we're speaking to. So let the sales pitch begin. So not many at Jack had actually really heard of microlearning before. So even if we were using it currently in different training courses, it wasn't really presented in a way that made it obvious or different to stand out as microlearning. So these are some of the aspects that myself and my teammates, while launching this venture, had to utilize to sell this concept to the organization. So step one is really selling this as an all-new approach. I mean, we had to make it clear we are not using a canned presentation or the same style of e-learning courses that they see from us every day. This is created in a different system with a different look, different feel that appears much more digestible than a standard long-form course would be. Then two, we really had to use a lot of visual examples when presenting this idea, and this was key. So showing samples of the interactive activities, the video styles, and some realistic scenarios that could be related directly to restaurants and then executed in person. So we had to make it obvious this was not just going to be a long read and learn, but something that incorporated skill practice and direction that our audience could take action on in real life. And then the third part was establishing realistic timing for completion. So knowing our audience and how their work situation is, it was really vital that we create something that could be completed with only a 20-minute per day commitment, and to have a more open-ended deadline so that each market or organization or grouping could identify their own timing for overall completion that was specific to their business needs. And then finally, we really had to show proof of concept. So we needed to share real examples of microlearning and our personal experiences with it so that our belief could become their belief. And then from here, upon getting all these approvals from all these levels, our Cravers course was born and we were off and running. So I'm going to toss it to Stephanie now to walk through some of the programs and approaches that we utilized in this course to make it come to life.
Thank you, Lisa, for queuing that up for me and going through all of our proposals and sign-off process. So what I'm going to talk about is all of the different design considerations and the tools that we use to bring this project to life. So we started just really going back to what were the needs of this program. So first off, we knew we had an established system in place for distributing and tracking our learning. And we wanted this solution to fit within that system while looking and feeling unique to, make this something special that they were doing while not having them access it in a different way or learn a new system. So thinking again of our audience, we knew they had varying levels of technological savviness and we needed to meet them where they were. So a really good example of this is our district managers, and this is pretty wide for our audience actually. A lot of them just love to have something printed that they can hold in their hands, that they can take with them when they're going into a restaurant, and just something physical for them to bring around with them. So again, they were also looking for some in-person connection, in-person interaction. That was why we originally had gone with a conference. And even though we were moving away from a conference and bringing them all together into one place, we still wanted to foster that feeling of in-person connection without, having to fly them all in. So what tools did we use to meet all of these needs and bring this all together? First off, our experience was really centered around a YouTube style mini series. So we had a big curriculum. There were a lot of topics that we needed to cover, but we wanted this to feel approachable. So we designed this YouTube mini series where we had our hosts who are subject matter experts on these topics, and we created these short videos that were very familiar in style. You might see them something like this, going online and watching various creators. And we paired these YouTube style videos, short videos, with some animated style and some different style videos in between them to re-hit on topics and vary it so that people weren't getting bored and they were staying engaged. So these videos were really the core of our microlearning series. And we paired this into e-learning that we created using a tool called Evolve. So the reason that we decided to use this tool, Evolve, was it provided a unique look compared to all of the rest of the courses that we had in our current learning ecosystem. We wanted this appearance of short chunks, no long menus, so that nothing ever felt overwhelming for the amount of content that needed to be completed and gone through. So this menu here is exactly what they saw when they launched the course. It was looked like 4 short chapters, just these blocks where they could click into and access their material. Evolve as a tool also provided some gating for us so that it locked a chapter until they had completed the previous chapter, which was something that was important to us because we had a very structured way we wanted them to approach this program. And then we also added a bit of interactivity, some quizzes and fun things around those videos to provide just some additional touch points, engagement, repetition. You just hit all of our, you know, key learnings and best practices there. In total, so we were really aiming with the video, with the interactivity, with the quizzes. They weren't going to be spending any more than that 20 minutes that we were targeting each day watching any of this content or taking quizzes or anything like that. So the next piece of our puzzle was workbooks. So we created these as our physical touch points to the program. You'll see there we have 2, a participant workbook and a coach's guide. I'm going to get a little bit more into what the coach's guide was all about in a moment, but in the books, the participants completed in-restaurant activities. These were meant to take place just during their normal restaurant visits. So they're not taking additional time to go out to their restaurants to complete these activities. They're supposed to be doing them when they would be going out to their restaurants anyways. So really they're learning and practicing in the flow of work, which was important to us. Inside of the workbook, we had QR codes that linked out to 7 taps. So these were reminders and resources around learnings from the program that they accessed earlier. So we did this so that they didn't have to log back into an LMS to go back and remind themselves about things that they had already learned. Instead, they had their workbook, they had their phone. If they were trying to complete an activity in the restaurant, they could just scan that QR code with their phone and get a reminder about, things that they learned previously uh, to help them complete that activity. And we found that that was, a much more accessible way for them to get these reminders and resources. And finally, coming back around to our coaches. So our coaches, they were field leaders. They used the coaches guide to get further context and have scheduled touch points between our coaches and our learners. So having these designated coaches ensured not only that they received that in-person connection that we were talking about earlier, but we also wanted some additional touch points to make sure that they were really understanding the learning and then going back and putting it into place in their organizations. Um, all of these tools, these books, the 7 taps, the Evolve, the YouTube style videos, they all came together to create this blended micro learning program, as we're calling it. So one thing that people ask me a lot when we're talking about this is just all of these different pieces. How long did it take us to pull this program together? So you saw we had to do a lot of pivots along the way. So once we actually got to the point where we knew what we were doing, we had the sign off, and we were ready to move forward with our subject matter experts to start development to execute this design, We took about 6 active months of design time to pull it together, utilizing a team of about 2 instructional designers, a graphic designer, and then we contracted out with an additional video editor to help us get all this content out. So really, it was a pretty quick project considering all of the work that we put into it, but all in all, it came out pretty good, if I do say so myself. So what did it look like getting this out to our audience? So first off, we started our implementation process by getting the training content out to our coaches first prior to launching it to our district managers so that they would be prepared to guide our district managers through this process. They were also our hype people out to the field to help drive adoption of the program. Then once they were set and ready to go, we launched the course to our district managers. The intent was for them to really move through the content slowly at their own pace and implement these new routines and practices into their leadership um, and then down to restaurant operations. So as they've moved through the courses at this point. Most of them have gone through self-paced, and so right now we're in phase 3. So what we're looking for at this point is the impacts of their new leadership skills at the restaurant level. So we're looking to see, are they putting these routines and practices into place? And it's been really exciting to see those practices come to life in our restaurants as we go out and we visit. So that is the implementation process of the program. If you have any questions about it.
Well, we are going to look at you guys. This is awesome. See, I told you I'm right here. I'm not leaving you hanging. So first of all, we need a massive round of emoji applause for this one. So let's keep it firing up. Let the emojis fly, because I really love the way that you've done this. And just even the approach you took, you called them coaches. I love that kind of concept of change champions to kind of help bring this to life. I think a lot of times people just go, oh, let's throw it over the fence to the manager. And it's like, a lot of times the manager's like, I don't know what to do with this. I've got 9 million other things. I need that support. So I think not only the content, the way you put it together, but even the whole change management approach that you put behind it. I'll throw a few emojis into the mix for you on that one. Cause I think it's awesome. I think it's absolutely awesome. So I've got some questions that we'll spend some time here on and just engage with this so we can kill the slides just so we're chatting here. So the first ones, and all of you that I'm calling up on screen, this is based on those of you who followed the instructions and put them in the Q&A and got the most votes. So you are eligible for prizes. In addition to anybody else that the algo whispers in my ear, you also get prizes. But for those of you who maybe you're like, I'm more of a processor, it takes me a little time, just so you know, you also can post about it on LinkedIn, and then you're also eligible for stuff. So don't forget that. So let's talk about these top rated ones. So Nick brought up the fact that he was really curious and got the most votes on this in terms of who's got the most votes. So how long, like looking at this, soup to nuts, does it usually take, or this initiative from like concept to actually putting it out there?
So it took a lot of discussion before we landed on the concept itself. The course we had an outline and we knew what needed to be included in it, to getting a test version out was maybe 4 or 5 months around there. Lisa, I don't know if you wanted to talk to more of the pre-design portion of that, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at the entire picture beginning to end with all those initial pivots, right, where we were already underway with the conference version, and then, we were looking at just a standard kind of virtual learning version. I think all in all, we're probably talking about 9 months total, because we had those couple months before we landed into the blended microlearning approach and really got that sign off and that blessing to move forward. So once we were really underway, I think as Stephanie mentioned, from the time the decision was made, we began really the work in it and the design to launching out to that first level of coaches was right around 6 months.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. And now that you've established kind of that infrastructure, because I think sometimes that's honestly the hardest part sometimes. One is getting buy-in for this stuff and then establishing the infrastructure and going, how are you doing this? I have to imagine now there's more adaptability and flexibility. So if there's emerging needs or new things that pop up, you probably now can tap and fit into this in faster ways. Cause like, well, we know how we would do it. We know what we need to do. People are familiar with it. Now we can just accelerate it. Is that fair?
Yeah, there's been so many benefits to just taking a new approach, right? And doing that. One, I think we'll have a quicker and easier sign-off process, like you said, from leadership, but also for ourselves and our team. So many learnings, just getting in there and discovering all these different ways to make microlearning also be blended, and effective and speak to an audience that has no time in their schedule whatsoever. Just really opened our eyes to just this whole new world and this whole new way to approach things. So there's just been learnings across the board, and absolutely we've put many of these factors into play into different things we've created since this.
Okay, sweet. All right, let's jump to the second one, which Kaylee, you also are a prize winner on this one. So the buy-in and the support. So that's kind of that messy upfront piece, because it's always one thing where you go, oh, we've got this really great idea. We think it's going to be awesome. And then I have been through this and gotten my teeth kicked in more times than I can count, where you're like, hey, we want to do this. And everybody's like, yeah, cool. And sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't. What did you do? Like, how did you go about it? Was it a smooth sail? Did you run into some road bumps? Like, what was that like for you?
So I think for
That's
us,
a typical road bump.
yeah, this was one of the reasons why it was important for us to be able to fit this into our existing system. So they weren't logging into anything new. They weren't having to learn how to do anything new to access this material. And we also had repetition in the different ways they were accessing their learning. So we had the physical workbooks, we had QR codes, which they were already used to scanning codes for getting access to videos and things on the fly from training posters and things that we have in the restaurants. So we weren't, even though we were doing things new on our side with technology, the way that they were approaching it was not new to them.
Okay. I like that. And I think that's one of the things that is really important when we think about this, because a lot of times it's easy as L&D pros to be like, we've got this great way of doing it. And it's like, they don't care. Like, they've got their things and you need to meet them where they are. And if you go, hey, we've got this cool toy and we want you to do this. And they're like, yeah, I don't really care about that. But you were able to go, okay, how can we do the best of the both worlds? And I think that's what you're getting at, is you went, we're meeting you where you are, but then also incorporating other things that we know are best in class and are really going to push the needle. And then it really seems to have worked, which I think is fantastic. Instead of going, we like this, we want it this way, now you have to do it. I bet that probably would not have gone nearly as well. Just wagering a bet there.
Well, one of the great things about having that coach level go first too, right, was they got to, because there were minor nuances in regards to like clicking the buttons looked a little bit different, right, using this other system, even within our own LMS. So there were minor differences, but when you have that coach level go first and complete the entire thing, they already understand what those little nuances are. So when a district manager, right, your targeted audience is through this, if they run into those little things, they have someone right there that can support them. They don't have to send an email to like IT or to us or somebody and wait for a response. They have that coach right there at their disposal that can just easily give them those quick answers and just get them right back on track, So
well, and I think that's, and I love that. And that's why I said, like, that change champion, that coach it's such a brilliant way to do it, because not only that are they there to help support it, but as you're doing some of this stuff, like they'll give you some of the heads up on like, hey, just so you know, like this is going to be, if we do it this way, it's going to, and you can adapt a little bit on the fly instead of boom, you go to market and you're like, oh, well, now we're going to learn some of these lessons the hard way. So I think that's awesome.